Split Tube Media and the Cinesthesia podcast present a special daily October podcast. Help to the gang.
Jason, have you read Stephen King's books? Have you read Stephen King's books?
King movie, a Stephen King movie. King movie, a Stephen King movie. King movie, a Stephen King movie.
I have done my best to scare the shit out of you guys.
Grab that face. In that chair. Jason Markowitz pulling his hair.
Hey, everybody. We're back.
We're back, Yella.
You dirty dog. You killed my misery. Oh, yeah.
Today's episode will be all sung.
I'm guest host Morrissey. You killed my misery. Jim, are you there?
I'm abstaining from this podcast on account of Morrissey being here.
It's true. He is a Nazi now.
Yeah.
You know, you used to just be able to do a funny voice and have fun as Morrissey, but now you have to deal with his being a Nazi.
Yeah.
It really bums me out.
It really takes down the whole vibe.
Why do you hate me? Is it because I hate you?
Jason, I have really good news.
You do?
Yeah. I landed a sponsorship for the podcast.
What is it?
It's a conglomerate that's pushing healthy snacking for children. And they're going to give us some money. All I have to do is just eat this carrot all through this episode. So I have a mouthful of carrot.
Is day 16 of whatever. What show is this?
I don't know, I just chewed up carrot and spit it all over my floor. I didn't mean to do that. This is a nightmare.
I'm a human man, and with me is a cartoon rabbit. And we're here to talk to you about... Where do you go?
Misery. We're talking about misery today.
Misery. You murdered my misery.
Jason, so you... Sorry, I'm going to have a little carrot in my mouth until I get it all swallowed. That bit is really jamming up my whole episode. So, when you laid out the movies that we were doing for this terrible, terrible podcast, you told me we were skipping movies that were not horror movies, such as Dolores Claiborne, a movie about a golem, and The Green Mile, a movie about a long hike. But this movie, Jason, is also not a horror movie. It's just a doofy, dark comedy film. And I felt deceived.
Are you... So that... Look. What?
This is a movie, Jason, where I came into this movie thinking that it was going to be a writer. I knew it's a writer, right? Everyone knows the basis of Misery, right? It's like Cujo. There's a writer. He gets kidnapped by Kathy Bates, and then
Kathy Bates kidnaps James Caan
and murders his ankles. and presumably other stuff. And you think it's going to be about...
And causes him misery.
Misery! You think it's going to be about a normal lady slowly turning into a monster, but she starts, Jason, at 115% and only goes up from there. There's no part of this movie where you don't think she's completely crazy. And James Caan, Jason, is also... He's James Caaning the whole movie. He's got a big jaw, and he says pithy one-liners, and he's getting slowly murdered in a bed, and
throwing snowballs,
and he just smolders about it. He never feels like he's in more danger than an action hero, you know? And Rob Reiner the whole time, Jason, is playing like bibbity boop boop child movie. It's like the score is from Heavyweights, Jason. The score in this movie it's from Ernest Goes to Camp. It's the whole movie is just like a lark.
So
plus Jason. I'm going to keep talking until I'm out of carrot. Plus, Richard Farnsworth spends this whole movie being like, I'm the delightful sheriff, boop-a-doop-doop, and chasing down and just on a path to being murdered with a shotgun. But just being such a folksy delight. Which is also... my favorite off-brand ding-dong.
Folksy delight.
Yeah.
I could really go for a folksy delight.
A chocolate-frosted folksy delight.
Folksy delights ain't never caused no one misery. Jim, I think... So, I would like to promise you, truly, that this is a horror movie. And was received as such, and intended as such, by the creators and the audience. I think what you're responding to is just that this is what mainstream thrillers felt like in the 90s.
Is that true?
This is the first... So,
what?
In case anybody couldn't quite parse what we were saying. Yeah. The film we're talking about is Misery. Which is, I think, the first, not counting The Shining, because Kubrick's a weirdo, the first prestige King adaptation.
Sure.
So, like, all the adaptations we've seen up until now have been some degree of scrappy or disreputable or off to the side. And this is the first, like, full-on... mainstream, popular, acceptable in, like, cocktail parties kind of King adaptation.
Yes. Yeah, we've vaulted to the other side of it, right? That was your central crux of the Stephen King. And it's until then things are they're a little bit B-movie, even if they're not B-movie, they're all sort of there's a scrappiness to them, and then it sort of gels in a way, right? It's what you were saying 85 days ago, and this movie, just the other side of it, is definitely. It feels like it's building. It feels like there's an assumption in this film that Stephen King is worth something, which hasn't been there previously.
Yeah, and it was a move so Rob Reiner directed it, and it's the first movie that he made, I think, under his Castle Rock Entertainment company.
Which I thought, Jason, for a long time was Stephen King's personal production company, because why wouldn't it be?
Right, because it's Castle Rock.
And it's kind of
Rob Reiner just took the name.
Yeah, he said, "Give me your town."
Yeah, and he just jacked it. Yeah. But so this was a big, I think, gambit for Reiner to not end up pigeonholed as a comedy director. Because he'd made, if I'm not mistaken, he'd made This Is Spinal Tap, and that was popular. Sure. And then he'd made When Harry Met Sally, and that was huge. Yeah. And I think he wanted to... In fact, I remember reading about how he wanted to, like, show that he could do other things like thrillers.
Which he fails at spectacularly.
I would say your perspective is that he has still just made a comedy. Yeah. And maybe it's that he has... like comedy instincts that are still coming out, but I genuinely think that this movie, as written by William Goldman and directed by Rob Reiner and acted by James Caan and Kathy Bates, is intended to be frightening or at least disturbing. Richard Farnsworth, I'll give you.
I believe
but that's
you.
a delightful bit of comic relief.
Yeah, he's there's no way that Richard Farnsworth is not being a fun time side story. I believe you, Jason, that William Goldman wrote something with teeth to it. But I do not believe that Rob Reiner made that.
Well, I do think that what you're reacting to is the fact that I don't think Rob Reiner made something with teeth to it.
Yes.
But I don't think that equates to him making a comedy. I think that equates to him making a movie palatable for high-class mainstream audiences.
But it's not
like this is
it's not
a
toothless
movie
in a just kind of tepid way. It's toothless in a it's full of dumb jokes way.
Again, I'm gonna have to say I'm not sure. Some of them, yes, were jokes.
Jason, the movie starts
sort of
with
like
James
dark
Caan
jokes,
throwing a snowball at a tree, and saying "I still got it," and then cutting straight to I don't remember what the song is, but it's like a rock and roll guitar noodle. He's like Shazam! I'm James Caan. That's how the movie starts. That's its thesis.
Yeah, but that's
statement.
the happy time before the horror starts.
Yeah, but
that's
a happy
him being
time
like,
before horror
I finished
starts.
my book, I popped my champagne, and then I crashed my car in the snow.
Yeah.
And then we move into the horror.
Yeah.
Like, before that, I also can tell you exactly why he throws that snowball. Because I read William Goldman's book, in which he talks about writing the screenplay, and he put that in there because the rest of the film requires you to believe that James Caan is the kind of person who has been, like, physically fit, and so would be able to, build himself back up in that wheelchair to do the things that he needs to do. And so he needed a way to economically communicate his physical fitness, so he had him throw a snowball and hit a tree.
Jason,
and be like, yes, I did it.
This is a prime example of the disconnect between Goldman and Reiner, because Goldman wrote that assuming that he was going to cast a spindly writer-looking dude, and Rob Reiner, being 40% a dum-dum, was like, I'm going straight to James Caan for this role, which is also shorthand for I'm a tough guy. At that point, you don't need a snowball.
You don't.
You just need to see his jaw one time. Or honestly, you just need to see his name in the credits, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I know.
I feel like I don't disagree with your core observations of the film. You have just turned them into positives that I don't necessarily think the film deserves. Because let me back up. This film is fine.
It's mostly a good time.
It's totally fine.
Farnsworth, I think, is a high point. Yeah. I think watching Kathy Bates do work is always delightful, and watching her do work in this movie never made me feel bad. I also don't think I've ever heard her talk in her higher register before, and that was probably the most disconcerting character choice she makes.
Yeah, no, Kathy Bates is turning in it's a career-making performance, as it literally was. Sure. She's, and Caan is conning it up. Yeah. He's, he maybe acts a little bit more in this movie than he had in the previous 45 and the following 26, sure. But not by that much. Right. But no, Richard Farnsworth and Frances Sternhagen are by far the best part of the movie. Oh yeah. As the aging sheriff and his wife,
functionally two characters from Batteries Not Included.
Well, they're just having a fun time solving this mystery as an old married couple. They had a real Nick and Nora Charles energy going on. Yes. And I personally would have been absolutely fine, nay, vastly preferred the film to just have been about them.
Oh, for sure.
And then 20% of the time we cut away to what's happening with James Caan? Will they find him in time? But mostly it's them sassing each other and doing a crossword and then solving a clue.
I love that.
I would watch that movie forever.
Jason, there's one specific moment I want to call out that I think is the strongest moment in the whole movie, and it's when Farnsworth has I don't know what his character is, and I don't care. He's just gone to a general store because he's begun to suspect that Kathy Bates is going to murder James Caan, and he asks the man who runs the store, who's basically David Koechner, if she's been in there buying papers, and the guy's like, newspapers? And he's like, no. Oh, no. The guy's like, she's been buying paper. And Farnsworth is like, newspapers? And he's like, no, writing paper. And Richard Farnsworth says, nothing odd about that, but mid-sentence turns his body and then whips his head to follow his body and just immediately beelines out the door, and it's one of the most delightful. I rewound and watched just that moment maybe 6 times. I would recommend that anyone who doesn't want to watch this movie finds just that moment. It's in the middle somewhere. Good luck.
No, there's a real missed opportunity to have made, easily 6 movies starring them as a crime-fighting couple.
Absolutely.
In the Frozen Hills. I mourn for the loss of it, but I'm glad to have what we have in this movie.
Before Fargo? No, this has got to be after Fargo.
Was Misery before or after? I feel like it was before.
Is it? They could have had the jump on Fargo if they made this movie about those guys.
Totally. It's there's a better Fargo just sitting inside this movie, and nobody could find it.
That's so sad.
The movie's fine. It's been, it's like an acknowledged classic or whatever.
Which is weird because it doesn't feel that strong to me.
No,
I thought it was dark. I thought it was funny, but I've seen darker and funnier movies. I think this movie's whole reputation is on Kathy Bates.
100% it's on Kathy Bates. But it also is very much I don't know, I think about this and I think about Carrie. Mm-hmm. Carrie had been accepted as sort of a mainstream American classic, sure. But at the time it wasn't exactly, I feel like as maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I'm just putting on whatever the opposite of rose-colored glasses is for older movies. Sure, greenish, but I feel like it came from a slightly seedier, trashier place than Misery, which, as I said, is this it's got Rob Reiner directing, it's got William Goldman writing, it's got Barry Sonnenfeld doing the photography. Yeah. There's movie stars, and it's gonna be wide released by a major studio. Again, I watch it and I'm like, okay, I kind of get it. And if I had seen this on television or had a VHS tape of it when I was 13, I'd probably have a lot more affection for it, like I do for something around the same time, like The Fugitive or The Net, sure. Or something like these, totally fine thrillers that have something in them that you catch early and you're like, oh yeah, that was exciting. But coming to it now, and especially coming to it having gone through all of the other Stephen King stuff. Yeah. And having seen so many other movies, it's just kind of okay, that's a thriller. And that's why my reaction to your whole comedy bit is to say, I really think you're reaching for something more alive than is there, because it really is just this is what thrillers were like. And it has a little bit more spark because Rob Reiner does have a slight edge to him in terms of being a comedian, and William Goldman has a lot of edge to him in terms of being William Goldman. And James Caan and Kathy Bates are both in their own way, bringing a lot to the film. Sure. Kathy Bates more in terms of actual acting, but James Caan in terms of his movie star persona. But it just doesn't. I don't think it really adds up to that much more than the sum of its parts.
I agree with your final statement there, but I do think, Jason, I think if you broke down the score of this movie versus, say, Cape Fear, you would say one of these is meant to be a doofus and one of them is meant to be upsetting.
But by the music, you mean?
Yes.
If you just listen to the music separate?
I think many of the elements of this film, if you looked at them individually, you would say, oh, this is comedic. This can't not be comedic.
I mean, I think there is a slight... I guess maybe I'm just objecting to it being... saying that it's just a dark comedy. Or that it's more comedic than horrific. Sure. Because certainly audiences at that time took it to be extremely horrific and disturbing, and it was the kind of water cooler horror movie like The Birds or something like that, where people were like, oh my god, did you see that? Oh, they did this. It became a real touchstone. So maybe but there's always, like Hitchcock, there's always comedy mixed in with the humor, with the horror.
Sure. But this movie, well, I don't know. I read there's that dumb penguin that she turns around as emblematic. Jason, he finds that book of all of her wrongdoings and newspaper clippings, and he flips through it, and it's oh, a man was murdered, her ex-husband, and then another page that's like, oh, someone murdered the head of the baby ward, and then a page that's like, ooh, a newspaper clipping about a baby being murdered, and another article about another baby being murdered, and there's a piece of paper on top of this article, Jason, where someone has written in 14-year-old girl handwriting font, another baby. That's a kids in the hall joke. That's not a decision that someone made thinking it was scary.
I think that it's just meant to show how deranged she is, and it's meant to be. This is a little bit like your inability to understand why people are afraid of clowns. Like it's the scariness of something that should be nice, but it's not.
But Jason, isn't. She isn't. I don't know what I'm trying to say. She isn't knowingly being deranged, you know?
No, of course not. But that's why she's, like, keeping a scrapbook of these things and writing, like, frilly notes in it like they're scrapbooks of nice things. Mm-hmm. But they're scrapbooks of horrible things that are things that she's done.
But I don't feel like the movie plays her that way. I don't know.
You don't think the movie plays her as crazy?
No. It plays her as crazy. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I will say the one time that the movie, I think, to get to your idea of like a real tension between what William Goldman understands and what Rob Reiner understands, there's a scene in the movie where, in my opinion, the script is on Annie's side. Sure. It's on Kathy Bates' side. And the direction is not. Mm-hmm. And I think that the script is correct. It's when she's complaining about... Do you remember the scene? She's complaining about seeing a movie when she was a kid. Mm-hmm. It was a serial, The Rocket Man.
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course I remember.
And it's when she's telling James Caan why what he's written in the novel that she's forcing him to write is inadequate.
Yes.
It's because he hasn't done the work to, like, honestly get around a genuine plot problem that he's created for himself. Yeah. She tells this story about watching these serials that she used to love to see, or what is it she calls them? She gets real mad when he calls
she has
them something
a different
else.
Name for it, but I don't remember what it is.
Like chapter movies or something like that. Then he's like, oh, they're called cliffhangers. She's like, I know that, I'm not stupid. But she talks about seeing this one that was super exciting to her because, like, the Rocket Man is trapped in a car, and then you see the car go off a cliff, and it hits the water, and you're like, oh no, how's he going to get out of that one? Yeah. And then when she comes back the next week, they show, like, what happened at the end, but they just add a shot in there that wasn't in the last week of him getting out of the car at the last second. And everybody cheers, and she, as a child, and also in this scene now remembering it, gets furious because it's such a cheat. Yeah. And you didn't, like, you just got cheated out of your genuine, like, plot and genuine inventiveness that this writer or whoever, crafted this ode to you. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Jim, in the movie, she's played as, like, getting into the height of her madness and the height of her insanity in this moment. And this is when she's really scary. Yeah. But it's also when she's the most absolutely sane and correct.
Yeah. It's a super
because
salient.
That is a cheat. Yeah. And everybody should be exactly that mad about it. And what's more, she's being a very good editor to James Caan. Yeah. Like, this is one thing they changed for the movie from the book that really annoyed me, is that, so in the movie and the book, she forces him, James Caan has killed off his, like, popular character, Misery, in his books. And because he's sick of it,
which is a joke.
Sick of writing them, he wants to get rid of it. Yeah. And so, and Annie, who's kidnapped him, is obsessed with Misery, and she finally reads the new novel and finds out that he killed her, and she forces him to write a new novel in which Misery is not dead. But when he brings her back to life through, like, a simple writer's cheat, she's like, no, this won't do it. This is not convincing. And she's right. Yeah. And in the book, she forces him to write this book, and she goes through all of this stuff, and he ends up publishing the book.
Oh.
Like, after she dies. In the movie, he burns it in front of her to, like, drive her crazy. In the book, he burns a decoy because in his heart of hearts, he knows that she just made him do the best work of his life.
That's amazing.
And he can't get rid of it.
That makes it so much better.
Yeah, because it's so much better.
We've talked before about how Jason, about how King's... Sorry, I'm getting flustered. About how King's books and thereby movies are just absolute direct metaphors for things he's going through at that moment. And this... When you watch this movie, it reads as super hateful to his audience because it's clearly a movie about how he wants to stop doing whatever he's doing and just move on and do something else, but his audience won't let him. They're tying him to a bed and smashing his ankles with a hammer. But that change of
in the book, she
ending.
actually cuts his foot off.
Oh, really?
That's the other thing they changed. William Goldman had a huge fight with Rob Reiner where he was like, we have to do this scene.
Yeah.
It's the best scene in the book. She's going to cut his feet off. And Rob Reiner's like, no, everybody will walk out of the theater. I'll lose my middle-class audience.
You know what I bet Rob Reiner actually said? I bet he said, no, because I'm making a comedy, and you can't fully slice off someone's foot in a comedy. That minor change, Jason, makes this a movie about Stephen King feeling trapped by his audience, but that fanatical audience pushing him to make better things. That makes it completely flips the whole...
It's an ode to tough editors.
Yeah,
it's an ode to audience demands.
That makes it a beautiful movie.
Yeah. Or story.
Whatever.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know anything.
That's really... What are you going to say?
I'm going to say that Rob Reiner is good at putting a crew together, and that is the extent of his directing ability. Come at me, Rob. What do you got? I mean, money and a career, sure, but...
Money, career, a Twitter account from which he foams at the mouth about Russian conspiracy theories. He's gone full meathead lately, so I don't think anybody's going to be coming out to defend Rob Reiner too hard.
That's fair.
But yeah, like I said, this movie's fine. There's better William Goldman movies. There's better Rob Reiner movies.
Yeah, of course. There's better Kathy Bates movies, probably. There's better James Caan movies. There's better movies with a ceramic penguin. There's better movies with a pig named Misery, maybe. Who knows?
There's not, however, a better movie about Richard Farnsworth.
That might be true.
And Francis Sternhagen solving mysteries.
And that's a shame,
as an old,
Jason.
Sarcastic married couple.
There should be a better movie about that. There should be.
And really, if we
them.
can carry anything away from this, is that everybody should watch this movie, if only so that they can dream the movies that you'll never get to see that could have been.
I wish there was enough of them that you could edit this down into a 25-minute TV pilot for a show about them, but there isn't even that much of them.
No, there's not. I do want to... It makes me want to read the book just to see what the tone of their scenes is like, because to me, their scenes felt very William Goldman and not as much Stephen King.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see what he brought to it that wasn't necessarily in the novel. Really, the same with the Rocket Man rant. That's probably in the book, or some version of it is in the book. But the passion of it and the way it's phrased, like that is a William Goldman rant, or that's what it sounds like anyway. Yeah. So either William Goldman found his own heart in Stephen King's words, or he really did some work in there. But yeah, that's Misery. I guess I'm not miserable.
No, it was fine. This movie lands firmly in the middle.
Stupidest joke.
Remember, kids, carrots will solve any problem you have with your eyeballs. Literally any medical issue with your eyeballs.
Just stick the carrots in your eyeballs.
Yeah, just rub it on there.
It solves it. All right, we're at time, and there's a number of places there that we can just cut it.
We should start a business called Tom's Carrots.
Hell to the King is a special presentation of the Cinesthesia podcast, produced by Iguana Studios, and distributed by Split Tooth Media. Music by Loyalty Freak. Hell to the King is recorded before a live studio audience of people who apparently never learn to stay quiet while someone else is talking. Yes, I'm talking about you, in the red sweater. You're real mouthy. Shut it, shut it, shut, 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 shut.